It should have been the moment of comfort she looked forward to all week. Instead, it was the moment that split her life in two. Grace stood on the worn linoleum floor, her hand already raising to wave through the thick, reinforced glass. A weak, tired smile was fixed on her face, a mask she wore every Friday. And then she saw it. Betrayal is a cold, sharp feeling. But to see it happen right in front of your eyes, in a place already filled with so much pain, that is a different kind of suffering. It is the deep ache of knowing that every sacrifice you have made means nothing. It is the horrifying realization that the person you are fighting for, the person you have ruined yourself for, has already forgotten you. Grace was visiting her wife, Barbara, in prison. She was sacrificing her home, her retirement savings, and her own peace of mind to pay for the expensive lawyers, all to prove Barbara's innocence. Grace believed in her. She believed Barbara had been framed. Until that very second. Until she saw Barbara in the hallway just before the armored door buzzed open, turn to the guard. Until she saw her wife pull the guard, Rebecca, into the small, shadowy alcove by the doorway. Until Grace watched, frozen, as her wife, Barbara, gave that prison guard a quick, familiar kiss. It was not just a kiss. It was a conspiracy. A sick betrayal that went much deeper than simple infidelity. It involved stolen money, a complex web of lies, and a dreadful plot that Grace was never meant to uncover. This story is about what happens when the person you trust the most is the one hiding the most sickening secret of all. If this story touches your heart and makes you think, please take a moment to press the like button. It truly helps our channel reach more people who need to hear these stories. We love to know where our stories are being watched. Please comment with your name and the city or state you are watching from. And if you are new here, please subscribe and click the bell. We have new stories every week and you will not want to miss what happens next. Now let us begin. The air in the prison waiting room was always stale, heavy with the scent of industrial disinfectant and unspoken sadness. Grace had been sitting here for 45 minutes, just waiting for her turn. The journey to the state correctional facility was a trial in itself. Grace no longer owned a car. She had sold it 8 months ago to pay the retainer for the appeals attorney, the one who promised he could find the flaw in the prosecution's case. Now her Fridays began before dawn, with a 2-hour bus ride that rattled her bones and left her feeling gray and exhausted before the day had even truly begun. The other people on the bus were a quiet group. Mothers, wives, sometimes fathers, all carrying the same heavy burden. They rarely spoke to each other. There was nothing to say. They just stared out the windows as the city turned into suburbs, and the suburbs turned into the flat, empty countryside where the facility stood, a blot of concrete and steel against the horizon. When she arrived, the routine was always the same. She presented her identification to a stern-faced officer behind a thick pane of glass. She signed her name in a logbook, her hand slightly shaking as it always did. Then came the search. She had to remove her shoes, her belt, and the simple wedding band she wore. She was scanned with a metal detecting wand, a procedure that always felt like an accusation. She was not allowed to bring anything in. No tissues, no letters, not even a stick of gum. Grace hated this place. She hated the smell of it, the coldness of the cinder block walls painted a pale, sick green. She hated the constant metallic slam of doors and the flat, emotionless voices that echoed over the speaker system. But most of all, she hated what this place represented. The supposed failure of justice, the terrible mistake that had landed her wife Barbara behind these walls. Barbara had been a financial manager at a large investment firm. She was bright, charming, and ambitious. Then 18 months ago, millions of dollars had vanished from a client's account. The trail, according to the prosecutors, led directly to Barbara. She was arrested and the trial was swift and brutal. "I was framed, Grace," Barbara had wept, her face pale in the harsh courtroom light. "It was Harrison, my boss. He made me sign documents I didn't understand. He used me." Grace believed her. How could she not? This was Barbara, the woman she had built a life with for 15 years. The woman who made pancake breakfasts on Sundays, the woman who could make her laugh like no one else. Barbara was not a criminal. She was a victim. And so Grace had become a warrior. She liquidated their joint savings. She sold their beautiful 2-story home and moved into a small, bleak apartment with cracking linoleum floors. She sold her jewelry, her car, and even her mother's antique furniture. Every penny went to the legal defense, to the fight to clear Barbara's name. She was exhausted, broke, and lonely, but she was doing it for love. Today she waited in the visitation room. It was a large, noisy hall filled with rows of small tables and plastic chairs, all bolted to the floor. Families were clustered together, talking in low, urgent voices. Children were crying. A guard watched over everything from a raised platform. Grace sat at her assigned table, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She watched the heavy steel door where the inmates entered. Her heart gave its usual anxious little jump when the buzzer sounded. The door opened. An inmate in a standard-issue tan uniform stepped out, followed by a guard. Not Barbara. Grace settled back, her nerves tightening. Another buzz. Another inmate. Finally she saw her. Barbara. Her hair was pulled back and she looked tired, but she smiled when she saw Grace. Grace's own mouth twitched into a return smile, a reflex of relief. Barbara started walking toward the table, but she was not alone. The guard, a tall, severe-looking woman named Rebecca, was walking right beside her. Rebecca was new, or at least new to this section. Grace had seen her a few times over the past month, but had never paid her much attention. She had dark hair pulled into a tight bun and a face that seemed incapable of smiling. Barbara paused just a few feet from the doorway and turned to the guard. Grace assumed she was saying thank you or asking a question. Guard Rebecca stopped, her body angled slightly away from the room, creating a small pocket of privacy in the open hallway. Grace was about to raise her hand to wave to catch Barbara's eye. And that is when it happened. It was not a long, passionate embrace. It was fast. But it was not mistaken. Barbara leaned in. Her hand came up and touched the guard's arm. Guard Rebecca leaned down slightly. Their lips met. It lasted only a second, a quick, practiced press. A kiss of familiarity. A kiss that spoke of routine. Grace froze. Her hand remained half-raised in the air. The sounds of the visitation room, the crying children, the murmur of voices, the scraping of chairs, all faded into a deafening roar in her ears. Barbara pulled back. Guard Rebecca's expression did not change, but her eyes, cold and dark, flicked past Barbara and met Grace's. For one horrifying instant, Grace saw a flicker of something in those eyes. Not guilt. Not fear. It looked almost like amusement. Then the moment was over. Rebecca nodded curtly. Barbara turned, her face once again arranged into the smile of a loving, incarcerated wife, and she walked the remaining steps to Grace's table. "Grace, darling, I'm so glad to see you," Barbara said, sitting down. Her voice was exactly as it always was. Bright, a little strained, but happy. Grace looked at her wife. She looked at the mouth that had just been pressed against a guard's. She looked at the woman she had sacrificed everything for. She opened her own mouth to speak, but no sound came out. The room was spinning. She felt cold, colder than the concrete walls around her. Barbara's smile faded, replaced by a look of mild concern. "Grace? Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." Grace stared at her, the word betrayal echoing in her mind. It was a sick, twisted, unbelievable betrayal. And it had happened right in front of her. Grace's mind was a storm of white noise. The image of the kiss was burned onto her vision, playing over and over. The casual way Barbara touched the guard's arm. The way Rebecca leaned in. The flicker of cold amusement in the guard's eyes. "Grace? Say something." Barbara's voice cut through the fog, sharp with irritation. "You look terrible. Is it money? Did the lawyer call?" Grace finally found her voice. It came out as a dry whisper, barely audible over the din of the room. "You kissed her." Barbara's face, which had been open with false concern, snapped shut. Her eyes narrowed. "What? Don't be ridiculous." "Who?" "The guard," Grace said, her voice growing stronger, colder. "The one who just walked you in." "I saw you in the hallway. You kissed her." She watched Barbara's reaction, searching for any sign of guilt, of shame, of an apology. She saw none. Instead, Barbara's face hardened into a mask of indignation. She let out a short, sharp laugh, a sound that held no humor. "You're seeing things, Grace," Barbara said, leaning forward. She lowered her voice, but it was edged with steel. "I'm under enough stress in this place. The last thing I need is you coming in here with wild accusations." She was fixing my collar. "It wasn't a collar, Barbara," Grace insisted, her heart pounding. "I saw your hand on her arm. I saw your lips touch. I saw her look at me." "Oh, so now she looked at you?" Barbara scoffed, leaning back in her plastic chair and crossing her arms. This was a new side of Barbara. The vulnerable, framed victim was gone. In her place was someone cold and defensive. You're paranoid. The stress is getting to you. Maybe these visits are too much for you. The insult hit Grace like a physical blow. Too much for her? She who sat on a rattling bus for 4 hours every week. She who ate instant noodles for dinner so she could pay for briefs and motions. How dare you, Grace said, her voice shaking now but with anger not weakness. How dare you say that to me? I have given up everything for you. I sold our house. I sold my mother's ring. All because I believed you. Believed me. Barbara hissed, her eyes darting around. Guard Rebecca was now standing on the raised platform at the front of the room, her arms crossed, watching them. Watching Grace. Are you saying you don't believe me now? After all this? I'm saying I saw what I saw, Grace said firmly. Who is she, Barbara? She's a guard. That's it, Barbara snapped. Now, are we going to talk about my appeal or are you going to sit there and insult me? The lawyer, Grace. Did he file the new motion? Grace stared at her. The question about the appeal felt grotesque. All this time Grace had been picturing Barbara in her cell, weeping, afraid, marking off the days. But the woman in front of her was not afraid. She was angry. She was in control. And she had just been caught. The conversation was over. Grace knew with a sinking certainty that she would get nothing more from her. Barbara was a wall of denial. I can't do this, Grace said, her voice flat. She stood up from the table. The chair scraped loudly on the floor and a few people at nearby tables looked over. Barbara's eyes widened, this time in genuine surprise. What are you doing? Sit down. You can't just leave. Yes, I can, Grace said. She looked at Barbara, at the stranger sitting in her wife's chair. I feel sick. Grace, don't you dare walk out on me, Barbara commanded, her voice low and dangerous. Sit down. But Grace was already turning. She walked away from the table past the other families, her head held high, even as she felt her entire world collapsing. She did not look back. She walked straight to the exit door and signaled to the guard standing there. As she waited for the door to be buzzed open, she risked one last glance back. Barbara was still sitting at the table, staring after her, her face a mask of pure fury. And on the platform, Guard Rebecca was watching Grace, her expression perfectly, terrifyingly blank. The door buzzed. Grace pushed it open and walked out, leaving Barbara sitting alone at the table. The walk back through the series of checkpoints, the retrieval of her wedding band, the long silent walk to the bus stop. It all passed in a blur. She sat on the bench, the cold afternoon wind cutting through her thin coat. She had come here filled with duty and a desperate, fading love. She was leaving with a cold, hard knot of suspicion in her stomach. The denial had been too quick, too angry. The way Barbara had immediately tried to turn it around on Grace, to call her paranoid, was a tactic. It was manipulation. Grace replayed the moment. The kiss. The look in Rebecca's eyes. It was real. As the bus pulled up, its brakes hissing, Grace had one final chilling thought. She had been so focused on the betrayal of the kiss itself, the infidelity. But what if it was more than that? What if the kiss was not the secret? What if it was just a symptom of a much larger, sicker betrayal? She got on the bus, her mind racing. Barbara wasn't just cheating on her. She was hiding something. And that guard was in on it. The bus ride home was a torment. Every rattle of the old vehicle seemed to shake Grace's thoughts into new, more painful combinations. What was Barbara hiding? How long had this been going on? Was the guard, Rebecca, giving her special treatment? Was that it? A simple, sordid trade for comforts in prison? But Grace's mind kept going back to Rebecca's eyes. The coldness. The amusement. And Barbara's reaction. Not the shame of a wife caught cheating, but the anger of a conspirator whose plan was threatened. When Grace arrived back at her small apartment, the place felt different. It was no longer her sanctuary, the place she rested before resuming the fight. It was the home of a fool. The peeling linoleum, the second-hand sofa, the empty cupboards, they were not symbols of her sacrifice. They were symbols of her stupidity. She sat at her tiny kitchen table for hours just staring at the wall. She was broke. She had no power. Barbara was in prison, but she was the one who seemed to hold all the cards. And Grace was on the outside, completely alone. She slept fitfully and woke with a new, cold resolve. If Barbara was lying, Grace needed to know the truth. Not just about the kiss, but about everything. Her first thought was the lawyer. She had paid him thousands of dollars. But he was Barbara's lawyer. His duty was to his client. He would not help Grace investigate his own client. She was truly on her own. Grace thought back. She had sold everything of value. Almost. She went to her closet and pulled down an old shoebox from the top shelf. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was the last of her mother's jewelry. A pair of pearl earrings and a simple gold locket. She had promised herself she would never sell these. She looked at them, her heart aching. Then she thought of Barbara's kiss and Rebecca's cold eyes. She closed the box. The next morning she did not take the bus to the lawyer's office. She took it downtown to a street with aging brick buildings and dusty windows. She found the name on a small painted sign, Evans Investigations. Discretion guaranteed. The office was up a narrow flight of stairs. It was cluttered and smelled of stale coffee and old files. A man in his late 60s with graying hair and a rumpled shirt looked up from his desk. "Can I help you, ma'am?" His name was Mr. Evans. Grace sat down, her hands clutching her purse. She felt foolish, like a character in a cheap detective novel. I need you to find out about someone. A woman." "All right," he said, pulling a notepad closer. "Who?" "Her name is Rebecca," Grace said. "I don't know her last name. She's a guard at the state correctional facility." Mr. Evans raised an eyebrow. "A prison guard. That's a bit tricky. What's she done?" Grace hesitated. My wife is an inmate there. I saw this guard, with her. I think there is something wrong." "Wrong how?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. "You think she's hurting your wife?" "No," Grace said, the word coming out sharp. "I think they are involved. But I think it's more than that. I think this guard is. I don't know. I just have a terrible feeling." Mr. Evans studied her for a long moment. He saw the worn coat, the exhaustion in her eyes, and the determination. "These things can get expensive. My rate is hourly." Grace opened her purse. She took out the pearls and the locket and placed them on his desk. "This is all I have. It's my mother's. Sold. But it's real gold. The pearls are real too. It should be enough for a few days of your time." Mr. Evans looked at the jewelry. He looked at Grace. He sighed a long, slow breath and gently pushed the locket back toward her. "Keep your mother's locket, ma'am." He picked up the pearl earrings. "These will cover the initial background check. I'll see what I can find. But I need more than Rebecca. When's your next visit?" "Friday," Grace said. "Good. Go to your visit. Act normal. Do not, under any circumstances, let your wife know you suspect anything. Get me a last name. Get me anything. And if I can't, then I'll have to sit outside the prison gates at shift change and take pictures of every female guard who walks out. It's slow, but it works." He put the earrings in his desk drawer. "I'll start with the public employee database. Might be that simple. Call me Friday afternoon." Grace left the office feeling like a stone had been dropped into her stomach. She had just hired a private investigator to look into her own wife's affair. But it was more than an affair. She knew it. The week was agony. She went to her part-time job shelving books at the local library, her mind a million miles away. She ate. She slept. But all she did was wait for Friday. What if she was wrong? What if it was just stress and she had now spent her last valuable possession on a paranoid fantasy? But every time she closed her eyes, she saw the kiss. She saw the look on Barbara's face when she confronted her. The cold, manipulative anger. When Friday came, Grace felt a different kind of anxiety. She was no longer just a sad, supportive wife. She was a spy. She got on the bus, her heart pounding a heavy, slow beat. She went through security. She sat in the waiting room. When the buzzer sounded, she forced her face into a mask of calm. She had rehearsed this. She was going to apologize. Barbara was brought to the table. This time by a different, older guard. Barbara sat down, her face set in a stubborn, angry expression. "Barbara," Grace began, her voice soft. "I am so sorry. You were right. The stress. I haven't been sleeping. I imagined it. I was out of line. Please, can you forgive me?" She watched Barbara's face. The anger did not vanish instantly. It softened, but the suspicion remained. "You really had me worried, Grace. Accusing me like that. Here. I know. It was horrible of me," Grace said, reaching across the table to touch Barbara's hand. Barbara let her. I'm just I'm falling apart without you. I just want you home. This seemed to be the right thing to say. Barbara's shoulders relaxed. I know, darling. It's hard on both of us. But you have to trust me. I am only focused on getting out of here. On our appeal. I know. I know you are, Grace said, infusing her voice with as much trust as she could fake. They talked for 20 minutes about the lawyers. About motions. It was the most normal conversation they'd had in months. As the visit was ending, Grace saw guard Rebecca walk into the room, scanning the crowd. Her eyes landed on their table. Oh, Grace said as if just noticing. There's that guard I was so awful about. Barbara glanced over. Who? Oh, her. What's her last name anyway? Grace asked, trying to sound casual as if she were making small talk. She always looks so stern. Barbara frowned. Why? No reason, Grace said quickly, backtracking. I see her all the time. Just curious. Barbara looked at her, searching her face for any sign of deception. Grace held her breath. It's Smith, I think, Barbara said, shrugging. Or Jones. Something common. I don't know, Grace, I don't pay attention to their names. She was lying and Grace knew it. Her answer was too vague, her eyes too shifty. The buzzer sounded. Time was up. I love you, Barbara, Grace said, standing. I love you too. Now please pull yourself together. I need you strong, Barbara said. Grace walked out. She had failed. She didn't get the name. She walked to the bus stop, defeated. As she waited, she watched the employees' parking lot. A few minutes later, the shift change began. Guards and staff streamed out of the building. Grace saw her. Walking with a purpose. She was not in her uniform. She was wearing jeans and a jacket. She walked to a car. It was not a cheap sedan. It was a new, dark blue, expensive-looking car. Grace watched as Rebecca got in and drove away. Grace fumbled for her phone. She called Mr. Evans. I didn't get the name, Grace said, her voice shaking. She lied to me. But I saw her. She just left. She's driving a brand new dark blue luxury car. A 300 series. How can a prison guard afford that? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Well, Mr. Evans finally said. Now that is interesting. A new car and a secret. That's a lot better than a last name. I'll wait for her tomorrow. I know exactly what to look for. Mr. Evans was a man of his word. He was also a man of immense patience. He spent the next 3 days parked in a discreet spot with a view of the employee parking lot at the correctional facility. He had a thermos of coffee, a notebook, and a camera with a long focus lens. He watched the guards come and go. He saw the dark blue luxury car arrive each morning and leave each afternoon. He ran the license plate. The car was registered not to a Rebecca, but to an anonymous holding company. That's a shell, he explained to Grace over the phone. People use them to hide assets. To buy cars, houses. It means whoever owns this car doesn't want to be found. And it takes serious money to set one up. So it's not her car? Grace asked, confused. Oh, it's her car all right. She's the only one who drives it. But it was bought by someone else, or by her, using money that's being hidden. This was far beyond a simple workplace affair. A guard with a shell company and a luxury car? Grace felt a chill. This was connected. It had to be. What now? Grace asked. Now we follow the car, Mr. Evans said. She's not going straight home. She's too careful. But everyone has a routine. For 2 days Mr. Evans followed Rebecca. She was, as he predicted, careful. She drove for miles, took random turns, and seemed to be checking her mirrors constantly as if she knew she might be followed. But Mr. Evans was old school. He was good. He hung back, letting other cars get between them, never getting too close. On the 3rd day, Rebecca's routine finally broke. After her shift, she drove to a town 30 miles away. She parked on a residential street, 2 blocks away from a small, well-kept brick house. She sat in her car for 10 minutes. Then she got out, carrying a simple brown paper grocery bag, and walked to the house. Mr. Evans watched from a distance, his camera ready. The door of the house opened before Rebecca could even knock. A woman stood there. She was in her late 60s with neatly styled gray hair and a bright red coat. She smiled at Rebecca. Rebecca smiled back, handed her the bag, and stepped inside. Mr. Evans took several pictures. The woman in the red coat. The house. Her. An hour later, Rebecca left, empty-handed. She drove off. Mr. Evans did not follow her. He stayed, his attention fixed on the house. He ran the address. He checked the property records. He called Grace that evening. His voice was grim. "Grace," he said, skipping the pleasantries. "I need you to prepare yourself. It's not good." "What did you find?" Grace asked, her hand gripping the phone. "The guard Rebecca. She met someone today. At a private residence. She delivered a package." Who was it?" "I ran the plates on the car parked in the driveway. I ran the property records for the house. It's all registered to the same person." "Who?" Grace almost shouted. "Grace. The house belongs to Barbara's mother." The phone almost slipped from Grace's hand. "What? Oh, that can't be right. Her mother, Helen? She lives in a small apartment. She's on a pension. She can't afford a house like that." "Well, she's been living in this one for 6 months, Mr. Evans said. "Paid for in cash. By the same holding company that bought Rebecca's car." Grace collapsed onto her sofa. Her mind was reeling. Barbara's mother. Helen. The sweet, weeping woman who had clutched Grace's hand during the trial, telling her how her poor, innocent girl had been framed. "The bag," Grace whispered. "What was in the bag?" "I couldn't see," Mr. Evans said. "But given the circumstances, my guess is cash. Unmarked. Untraceable. The guard is a courier. She's moving money for your wife." Grace felt a profound wave of nausea. The betrayal was not just Barbara's. It was the whole family. They were all in on it. "She wasn't framed," Grace said, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. "Was she?" It was not a question. It was a statement. The truth, ugly and sharp, was finally settling into place. "It doesn't look like it, Grace," Mr. Evans said gently. "It looks like Barbara wasn't the victim. It looks like she was the boss." The implications were horrifying. Barbara hadn't been set up by her boss, Harrison. She had been the one pulling the strings. The stolen money, the millions. It wasn't gone. It was being hidden. Laundered. By her girlfriend, the prison guard. And by her own mother. And Grace? Grace was the biggest fool of all. She was the loyal wife, the perfect cover. She had spent her entire life savings, sold her home and bankrupted herself, trying to free a woman who was already guilty. A woman who was actively running a criminal enterprise from inside a prison cell. The kiss. It wasn't a secret affair. It was a business transaction. It was a partnership. "They're using me," Grace whispered. The legal defense, the appeals. It was all a show. A way to make Barbara look like a victim, to keep anyone from looking too closely. And Grace was funding the charade. "Grace," Mr. Evans said, his voice pulling her back. "You are in a very difficult position. These are not good people. You need to be careful." "Careful," Grace said, a new cold anger rising inside her. It was an anger so pure and so cold it burned away her tears. "I'm past careful, Mr. Evans. They took everything from me. My home. My money. My life. My past." She stood up, her entire body shaking. "They think I'm a fool. They think I'm a weak, crying wife they can just use up and throw away. What are you going to do?" "This Friday," Grace said, her voice hard as ice, "I'm going to the prison. And I'm going to play the part of my life. They want a fool. I'll give them a fool. But this time, I'll be listening." He had a new plan. It was no longer about saving Barbara. It was about saving herself. And making them pay. The week leading up to the next visit was the longest of Grace's life. She was living a double life. By day she was the grieving, stressed but supportive wife. By night she was a woman consumed by a cold, calculating rage. She spoke to Mr. Evans every evening. He had continued his surveillance. Rebecca's routine was now clear. Twice a week she drove to that house. Twice a week she delivered a package. Mr. Evans had managed to get a closer photograph. It was, as he suspected, a thick envelope. "She's moving the money from a source, probably a safety deposit box, to the mother," he theorized. "The mother then washes it. Small deposits, purchases. It's classic laundering." "But where is the money coming from?" Grace asked. "I guess. Barbara hid it before she was arrested. She was the only one who knew where it was. She took the fall, knowing she'd get a lighter sentence, and now she's controlling it from the inside, using her guard girlfriend as the go-between." The sheer audacity of it left Grace breathless. Barbara had orchestrated her own arrest. She had sat in court weeping fake tears while Grace sat behind her weeping real ones. When Friday arrived, Grace felt no fear. She felt nothing but ice. She put on her usual simple dress, the one Barbara said made her look sweet. She rode the bus. She went through the metal detectors. She even managed a weak, sad smile for the guards she recognized. She sat at the table, her hands clasped in her lap, the very picture of a dutiful wife. Barbara was brought in. She smiled when she saw Grace. It was a genuine smile, one of relief. Grace's performance last week, her apology had worked. Barbara believed she was safe. "Grace, darling," Barbara said, sitting down. "You look a little better this week. Are you sleeping?" "A little," Grace lied, her voice soft. "I'm so sorry about last week. I was just so worried." "I told you it's nothing," Barbara said, waving a hand dismissively. "It's this place. It makes everyone crazy. Now tell me, what did the lawyer say? The new one. Did you pay him?" "Yes," Grace said. I had to sell my mother's pearls." She watched Barbara's face for a reaction. A flicker of guilt. A moment of shame. There was nothing. Just a small, tight nod. "Good. Good. It's all worth it, Grace. When I get out of here, I'll buy you 100 pairs of pearls. I promise." The lie was so easy, so smooth, it almost made Grace gasp. "I'll buy you." Of course she would. With the money Grace had been trying to prove she never stole. "I know you will," Grace said, forcing a smile. "Now listen," Barbara said, leaning in. Her tone shifted. It became practical, businesslike. "The lawyer is going to file a motion for compassionate release. He's going to argue that my health is failing. It's not, of course, but that's the angle." "Oh, Barbara, that's wonderful," Grace exclaimed, putting all her acting skills into it. "It is," Barbara said, a small, smug smile playing on her lips. "But it's expensive. These motions, these expert medical opinions, they cost a lot. The lawyer needs another payment. A big one." Grace's blood ran cold. "Another one? Barbara, I don't have anything left. The pearls were the last. The apartment, the car. It's all gone." Barbara's smile faded. Her eyes hardened. "What do you mean you don't have anything? What about the retirement account? The one from your old job?" Grace stared at her. That's less than $10,000. It's all I have to live on for the rest of my life." "Grace, don't be dramatic," Barbara snapped, her voice low. "We're talking about my freedom. What is more important? A few $1,000s or me coming home?" Grace felt the trap close around her. This was it. This was the end of the line. They were wringing her dry. I'll have to see," Grace stammered. "The penalties for early withdrawal." "Just do it," Barbara ordered. "Get the money. In cash. All of it. The lawyer needs it by next week." "Cash?" Grace asked, her mind racing. "He always takes a check." Barbara's eyes flickered just for a second. "A mistake. He said cash is faster. No waiting for it to clear. We need to move fast." He was lying. The lawyer didn't want the cash. Barbara wanted the cash. It was a test. Or worse, it was a final greedy grab before she, got released? Escaped? "Okay," Grace whispered, looking down at her hands. "Hey, Barbara. If it's for your freedom, I'll do it." Barbara's face instantly relaxed. She smiled, warm and loving again. "Thank you, darling. You are my savior. I knew I could count on you." She reached across the table and patted Grace's hand. Her touch felt like a spider. "I love you so much," Barbara said. "I love you too," Grace replied, her voice hollow. The visit ended. As Grace walked away, she saw guard Rebecca by the exit, watching her. Grace met her gaze. She held it for a beat, her face a mask of sad, beaten-down loyalty. Rebecca looked away, bored. Grace walked out of the prison, the cold air hitting her face. She had her answer. Barbara wasn't planning on a compassionate release. She was planning something else. And she needed Grace's last $10,000 to fund it. She got to the bus stop and called Mr. Evans. "She wants my retirement money," Grace said, her voice shaking with a cold fury. "She wants it in cash. $10,000. "Don't do it, Grace," Mr. Evans said immediately. "That's your last dollar." "Oh, I'm going to do it," Grace said. "I'm going to withdraw every penny. And I'm going to bring it to her. But we're not going to give it to the lawyer. What are you doing? She's lying. The money isn't for the lawyer. It's for her. It's for the guard. It's for my mother-in-law. It's for their whole sick, twisted plan. And this time, Grace said, watching the bus approach, this time we're going to follow the money. Grace was no longer the victim. She was the bait. And she was about to set the trap. Grace went to her bank the following Monday. The bank manager, a kind man who had known her for 20 years, looked at her with pity as she signed the forms to liquidate her retirement account. Grace, are you sure about this? He asked gently. The penalties are severe. This is everything. I know, Grace said, her hand steady as she signed her name. It's for Barbara's legal fees. A new appeal. It's our last chance. The manager just shook his head sadly and processed the withdrawal. He handed her a thick envelope containing $10,000 in $100 bills. It felt heavy in her hands like a brick. It was the last remnant of her old life. She did not go straight home. She went to Mr. Evans's office. He was waiting for her. Here it is, she said, placing the envelope on his desk. Mr. Evans opened it and whistled softly at the stacks of bills. That's a lot of loyalty. It's not loyalty, Grace said. It's evidence. Mr. Evans nodded. He pulled a small ultraviolet pen from his drawer. I agree. Let's make it good evidence. For the next hour they sat in the dusty office and meticulously marked the money. Mr. Evans made a tiny invisible X in the corner of every single bill with the special ink. Under a black light the X would glow brightly. This is good, he said, but we need more. We need to track it. I have a GPS tracker, but it's too big for an envelope. We need to be smarter. He went to a back room and returned with a small, thin device, no bigger than a credit card. This is a simple audio recorder. High fidelity. Voice activated. It's not a tracker, but it's better. We're not just going to follow the money, Grace. We're going to listen to it. How? We'll slit the lining of the envelope, he explained. We slide this in between the layers of cardboard. It's thin enough. When she gives the envelope to whoever she's giving it to, they'll talk. About the money. About the plan. And we'll have it all. But, how will I get it back? You won't, Mr. Evans said. This is a one-way trip. You are sacrificing this money, Grace. You have to be okay with that. This recording is the only thing you're buying. It's the most expensive recording you'll ever own. Grace looked at the money, the last of her security. She thought of Barbara's smug smile. She thought of Rebecca's cold eyes. She thought of her mother-in-law, Helen, taking the bags of cash. I'm okay with it, Grace said. Let's do it. They carefully prepared the envelope. They slid the thin recorder inside and sealed it perfectly. To anyone else it looked like a normal, thick bank envelope full of cash. Now the visit, Mr. Evans said. You can't give this to her. The guards will search it. You said she wants you to give it to the lawyer. She said the lawyer. But she's lying. She'll have a different plan, Grace insisted. You're right. She'll have to arrange a handoff outside the prison. She can't risk bringing that much cash inside. She'll tell you to give it to someone. Her mother. Or, if the guard. So what do I do? You play along, he said. You tell her you have the money. You ask her where to deliver it. And whatever she says, you do it. But you call me first. I'll be on you every step of the way. The visit on Friday was the most difficult yet. Grace walked into the prison holding the empty envelope from her bank, the one that had held the cash, just as a prop. She had to look like she had just come from the bank. The real envelope, the one with the cash and the recorder, was hidden in Mr. Evans's car, parked down the street. Grace sat down, her heart hammering. Did you get it? Barbara asked immediately, her eyes hungry. Yes, Grace said, her voice a low whisper. It's in my bag. I was scared to bring it in. In your bag. Barbara hissed, her eyes wide with alarm. You didn't bring it in here, did you? You fool. No, Grace said quickly. It's in a locker at the bus station. I didn't know what to do. You said the lawyer. Should I take it to his office? Barbara visibly relaxed, then looked annoyed. No. The plan has changed. The lawyer. He's too public. This has to be quiet. What do I do then? Grace asked, playing the part of the confused, helpless wife. Barbara leaned in so close Grace could smell the faint, stale scent of the prison soap. After this visit you'll go to the bus station. You'll get the money. You will go to the parking lot of the public library, downtown. At precisely 5 o'clock. The library? Where I work. Yes. No one will think twice about seeing you there, Barbara said. A car will pull up. The dark blue one. You'll recognize it. Grace's blood turned to ice. You will give the envelope to the driver, Barbara continued. Do not say anything. Just hand it over and walk away. Understand? Rebecca. Grace whispered, her voice trembling, which was not an act. Barbara, I don't know. She's a guard. Is this right? Grace, stop asking questions. Barbara snapped. This is for my release. It's the only way. This is the last step. Do this for me. For us. If you love me, you will be at that library at 5 o'clock. Okay, Grace said, her voice small. Hey Barbara. I'll be there. Good. Barbara sat back, a look of profound relief and satisfaction on her face. She smiled, a truly bright smile. It's almost over, Grace. I can feel it. Soon we'll be together again. Far away from all this. Far away from all this. The words echoed in Grace's mind. They weren't going to be together. Barbara and Rebecca were. They were planning to run. The visit ended. Grace walked out of the prison, her body rigid. She got on the bus, but she didn't go to the bus station. She got off 3 stops later, where Mr. Evans was waiting in his car. You were right, Grace said, climbing in. The library parking lot. 5 o'clock. She's sending Rebecca. Mr. Evans started the car. His face was grim. All right. It's 3 o'clock now. We have 2 hours to get in position. He handed Grace the prepared envelope. It felt impossibly heavy. I'll be across the street, Mr. Evans said. I'll have the camera. The recorder is active. The second you hand it to her, she'll drive away. She'll think she's safe. And she'll talk. She'll call Barbara or she'll call the mother. She'll celebrate. And we will hear every word. And then Grace, he said, his eyes meeting hers in the rearview mirror, we finally find out what this sick betrayal is really all about. The library parking lot was quiet. It was 4:55 p.m. Grace stood near the book drop-off, the thick envelope clutched in her hand. Her coat was buttoned up tight, but she was shivering, and not just from the cold. Mr. Evans was parked across the street, in a van that looked like it belonged to a plumber. He was invisible, but she knew he was watching. Grace's heart was a drum against her ribs. This was the point of no return. She was handing over the last of her money to the woman who was destroying her life. She had to trust that the tiny hidden recorder was worth it. At 4:59 p.m., the dark blue luxury car turned into the parking lot. It moved slowly, gliding over the pavement without a sound. It stopped directly in front of Grace. The driver's side window, heavily tinted, lowered just a few inches. Grace could not see Rebecca's full face, just her eyes, hidden behind dark sunglasses, and her mouth, which was set in a thin, impatient line. Neither of them spoke. Grace stepped forward, her hand shaking. She held out the envelope. A hand emerged from the car, Rebecca's hand. She snatched the envelope from Grace, her fingers brushing Grace's. Her skin was cold. The second she had the envelope, the window glided back up. The car was put in gear and it pulled away, turning out of the parking lot and disappearing into the late afternoon traffic. Grace was left standing alone, her hand empty. She felt hollowed out. It was done. She walked, as instructed, across the street to the bus stop, as if she were just a regular person going home. Mr. Evans's van did not move. He was not following her. He was following the money. The bus ride home was the worst yet. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by a deep, aching void. She had nothing. No money, no home, no wife, no future. All she had was a gamble on a tiny electronic device. When she got to her apartment, she just sat on the sofa in the dark. She did not turn on the lights. She just waited. Hours passed. 8 o'clock. 9. 10. At 10:30 p.m. her phone rang. It was Mr. Evans. Grace, he said. His voice was different. It was tight, angry. I'm coming over. I have it. 20 minutes later he was at her door. He looked exhausted. He was carrying a laptop and a small handheld receiver. Did it work? Grace asked, her voice barely a whisper. It worked, he said, sitting at her kitchen table. She didn't go to the mother's house. She went somewhere else first. A storage unit. I think that's the main collection point. She was in there for about 20 minutes. Then she drove to the mother's house. She was there for an hour. Then she went home. Did she talk? Oh, she talked, Mr. Evans said grimly. He plugged the receiver into his laptop and clicked a file. She waited until she was back in her car, driving away from the library. She must have an illegal cell phone smuggled into the prison for Barbara. Listen. He pressed play. First there was static. The sound of the car engine. Then a dialing tone. A click. Rebecca's voice filled the room clear as day. It's done. I have it. Then another voice. Barbara's. Muffled but unmistakable. All of it. The whole 10. Every penny, Rebecca said. There was a smug, cruel laugh. She handed it over like a little lost puppy. Didn't say a word. She really is a fool. Grace closed her eyes. Her stomach twisted. Barbara's voice came again. My God, I thought she'd finally get suspicious. We've taken everything else. She's just empty. It's almost sad. Don't feel sad, baby, Rebecca said. Feel rich. This is the last piece. With this plus what's in the unit, we have enough. Harrison's part is covered, my part is covered, and your mother's part is covered. The rest is all ours. Harrison. The boss. The man Barbara claimed had framed her. And the release? Barbara asked. Is it set? I filed the paperwork with the forged medical reports this morning, Rebecca said. The compassionate release hearing is set for next week. It's a rubber stamp. The warden owes me. By this time next Friday you'll be out. And Grace. What about her? Rebecca asked, her voice cold. She'll get the notification that you've been released. By the time she figures out you're not coming home to her, we'll be on a plane. She'll be in that dump of an apartment with nothing. Just a pile of legal bills for a case that was fake from the start. They both laughed. It was a cold, sharp, terrible sound. Grace opened her eyes. He was not crying. She was frozen. The sick betrayal. It was complete. Barbara was never framed. She was partners with her boss, Harrison. They had staged the whole thing. Barbara, as the victim, would take a light sentence. Harrison would walk free. Rebecca, their inside contact, would get Barbara out even earlier using forged papers. And Barbara's own mother was laundering the stolen millions. And Grace? Grace was the bank. The unwitting financier for their entire operation. Her home, her savings, her car, her mother's jewelry, and now her last $10,000. It had all been used to pay for the legal fees, which were actually just bribes and payments to Harrison, to Rebecca, and to the lawyers who were in on the lie. There's more, Mr. Evans said, his face pale. He fast-forwarded the recording. This is when she got to the mother's house. He pressed play. Rebecca's voice, here's the last of it. 10,000 from the fool. Helen's voice, Barbara's mother. Oh, that poor, simple woman. She never saw it coming. Did she cry? Looked like it, Rebecca said. Now is the rest ready? Yes. The tickets are booked. The new passports are in the safety deposit box. You get Barbara out and you're both gone. Mr. Harrison already transferred his final share to the offshore account. We're clean. We're all clean. Mr. Evans stopped the recording. The silence in the small apartment was total. Grace stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at the dark street. She had thought she was fighting for justice. She had thought she was saving her wife. She had been nothing but a pawn in their game. A joke. They took everything, she whispered. Yes, they did, Mr. Evans said, standing up. They took your money. They took your house. They took your past. But they made one mistake. Grace turned to look at him. They left you this, he said, tapping the laptop. They're arrogant. They're cruel. And they just confessed to conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, bribery, and escape. They didn't just betray you, Grace. They betrayed the entire justice system. And they gave us all the evidence we need to burn them to the ground. Grace looked at the laptop. The coldness in her veins was turning into a fire. They thought she was a fool. They thought she was weak. This time next Friday, Grace said, her voice hard and unrecognizable, Barbara will be getting released. Just like they planned. Grace, we have to go to the authorities, Mr. Evans said. The feds. Now. No, Grace said. Not yet. They want to show. We'll give them a show. They want her to be released? Fine. Let her be released. Let them all celebrate. Let them think they've won. Grace, that's crazy. They'll flee the country. No, they won't, Grace said, a slow, cold smile spreading across her face. Because we're going to be there. At the prison. Waiting for them. And we're not coming alone. They thought the betrayal was over. But for Grace, the final act had just begun. Grace and Mr. Evans did not sleep. They spent the entire night listening to the recording again and again, taking careful notes. They identified every crime. The sheer, cold-blooded calculation of it all was staggering. They had built a criminal empire, and Grace had been their primary, unwitting investor. The federal authorities, Mr. Evans said, his voice firm as he nursed a cup of instant coffee. We can't go to the local police. We can't go to the prison. Rebecca said the warden owes her. The rot goes deep. We must go over their heads. At 7 a.m. Grace, looking pale but resolute, walked into the downtown federal building with Mr. Evans. They didn't have an appointment. They just walked up to the main desk and asked to speak to an agent about an urgent matter of public corruption. They were made to wait, of course. They sat in a sterile room for an hour. Finally, 2 agents, a man and a woman, entered. They looked professional, skeptical, and tired. What can we do for you? My name is Grace, she began. And my wife is in the state correctional facility. I believed she was innocent. I was wrong. She's part of a massive conspiracy. And I have proof. For the next 2 hours they played the recording. The agent's skepticism vanished. Their eyes widened. They leaned forward, listening intently. They had Mr. Evans recount his surveillance. The luxury car. The house paid in cash. The bag drops to the mother. The storage unit. When the recording of Rebecca and Barbara's phone call played, the agents were silent, their faces hard. Her wife funded their escape, the female agent said, looking at Grace with a new, stunned respect. They used her own money to destroy her. They plan to release her this Friday, Grace said, her voice steady. They think I'm a fool who will be waiting for her at home. They will all be together. Rebecca, Barbara, and the mother. Probably Harrison too, somewhere celebrating. The male agent nodded, closing his notebook. Miss Sullivan, what you have done is incredibly brave. And incredibly dangerous. You've handed us a multi-million-dollar laundering and corruption case on a silver platter. So you'll arrest them? Mr. Evans asked. Oh yes, the agent said. But not today. Rushing in would tip them off. Harrison has offshore accounts. The money would be gone. Well, we are going to let their plan play out. Just as they intended. That's what I said, Grace whispered. The agent looked at her. We will let the compassionate release hearing happen. We will let her be discharged. We will have teams on Harrison, on the mother, and on the guard. Rebecca will pick up Barbara from the prison just as they planned. They will drive to their meeting point where the mother has the passports and the rest of the cash. They will feel safe. They will think they have won. And then, the female agent added, we will take them all down. At the same time, while they are all together holding the evidence in their hands. There's one more thing, Grace said. Ma'am, you've done enough. No, Grace insisted. I want to be there. When she is released. I want her to see me. I want them all to see me. The agents exchanged a look. It was against protocol. It was risky. Please, Grace said, her voice dropping. They took my life. They laughed at me while they did it. But I need them to see that I am not the fool they think I am. I need them to know it was me who brought them down. The male agent considered her. He saw the fire in her eyes, the steel in her spine. This was not a victim. This was a survivor. All right, Miss Sullivan, he said. You can be there. But you will be with us. You will do exactly as we say. This Friday, it's going to be a very interesting day. The rest of the week was a blur. Grace was moved to a secure hotel for her own safety. Mr. Evans was debriefed for hours. Federal teams began their own quiet surveillance, confirming every detail Mr. Evans had provided. The storage unit was watched. The mother's house was watched. Harrison's office was watched. The plan was simple. The federal team would let the prison release Barbara. Rebecca would be there in her blue car to pick her up. Grace with 2 agents would be in an unmarked car nearby watching. They would follow Rebecca and Barbara to the mother's house, which the agents confirmed was the meeting point. Once all the conspirators, Barbara, Rebecca, and Helen the mother, were inside, the teams would move in. A separate team would arrest Harrison at the same time. Grace waited. She ate the hotel food. She watched television. He was strangely, terrifyingly calm. The woman who had wept on the bus was gone. The woman who had sacrificed everything was gone. All that was left was the ending. Friday came. It was a bright, cold morning. Grace dressed in a simple dark pantsuit. She looked, as one agent noted, like she was going to a funeral. Or a rebirth, Grace replied. She was driven to a location near the prison. She sat in the back of a dark sedan with the two lead agents. They watched the front gates of the facility. Mr. Evans was in another car nearby. He had refused to be left out. At 10 a.m. the compassionate release was finalized. At 10:30 a.m. the dark blue luxury car pulled up and parked just outside the gate. Rebecca was at the wheel. At 10:45 a.m. the main gate buzzed. A figure emerged carrying a small cardboard box of personal items. It was Barbara. She was not wearing her prison uniform. She was wearing street clothes. She looked thin, but she was smiling, a wide, triumphant grin. She scanned the area and her smile grew when she saw the blue car. She hurried over, pulled the door open and threw her arms around Rebecca. They shared a long, passionate kiss right there in the daylight. "You did it," Barbara breathed, pulling back. "You got me out." "I told you I would," Rebecca said. "Now get in. Let's go home. Your mother's waiting. So is our new life." Barbara got in the car. Rebecca pulled away from the curb. "They're on the move," the agent in Grace's car said into his radio. "All units, maintain distance. Let's follow them home." The trap was set, and the targets were driving right into it. The drive to Helen's house, the house paid for with stolen money, was tense. Grace sat in the back of the federal car, two vehicles behind Rebecca's blue sedan, and watched. She saw Barbara in the passenger seat talking excitedly, her hands gesturing. She was probably pointing out all the things she had missed, completely unaware that her new life was going to last about 30 minutes. "She looks happy," Grace observed, her voice flat. "They always do right before," the agent replied. "Arrogance. They think they're smarter than everyone else." They followed the blue car off the highway and into the quiet residential neighborhood. Rebecca drove carefully, not speeding. She pulled into the driveway of the neat brick house. "Okay, team," the agent said into his radio. "Wait for the signal. Harrison's team, are you ready?" A voice crackled back. "Ready. He's in his office." "Mother's team, is she in there?" "Affirmative. Helen is inside. We have eyes on her." Rebecca and Barbara got out of the car. They were laughing. Barbara, free, stretched her arms to the sky, breathing in the free air. Rebecca put her arm around Barbara's waist, and they walked to the front door, looking like any happy couple. The door opened and Helen, Barbara's mother, was there, beaming. She hugged her daughter. "You're safe. Oh, my girl, you're safe." "We're all safe, Mom," Barbara said. "Did you bring them?" "Everything is on the kitchen table," Helen said. "The passports, the tickets, the new identities. We're all set." The three women went inside. The front door closed. "They're all in," the agent said. He looked at his partner. "Now." He spoke into the radio. "All units. Go, go, go." It was as if the quiet street suddenly exploded. Dark vans that Grace hadn't even noticed screeched to a halt in front of the house. Agents in dark tactical gear poured out, moving with terrifying speed. Federal agents. "Open the door." Inside the house there must have been panic. The agents didn't wait. They used a ram on the front door and it splintered open. "Get down. Get down on the ground. Hands where we can see them." The agents in Grace's car were also moving. "Ma'am, stay here," he ordered. But Grace was already getting out. She walked, not ran, up the driveway past the federal agents. She stood on the front lawn and looked through the now open doorway. It was a scene of chaos. Helen, the mother, was on the floor, weeping in terror. Rebecca, the tough prison guard, was pinned against a wall, her hands cuffed behind her back, her face a mask of white shock. And Barbara. Barbara was on her knees in the middle of the kitchen. The kitchen table was, as her mother had promised, covered in fake passports, stacks of cash and airline tickets. Barbara was staring at the agents, her mind unable to process what was happening. "This is a mistake," Barbara yelled. I was released. I was compassionately released. You have no right. Our right, the lead agent said, walking into the room, comes from federal warrants for conspiracy, fraud, and money laundering. Barbara, you are under arrest. Rebecca, you are under arrest for bribery, corruption, and conspiracy. Helen, you are under arrest for money laundering and conspiracy. Conspiracy? Barbara shrieked. Who told you? It was Harrison. That snake, it was him. No, a voice said. It wasn't Harrison. Grace stepped through the doorway. The agents parted to let her through. She stood in the entrance to the kitchen, calm and steady. The three women looked at her. Helen gasped. Rebecca's eyes went wide with dawning, horrified understanding. But Barbara just stared, her mouth open. Grace? What are you doing here? How? You asked me for $10,000, Barbara, Grace said, her voice clear and carrying across the room. The money for the lawyer. The money for your compassionate release. Barbara's face went from confusion to dread. I gave it to Rebecca, Grace continued, in the library parking lot. Just like you asked. But it was a very special envelope. It had a recorder inside. Grace nodded to the agent who was holding a small digital audio player. He pressed play. Rebecca's voice filled the kitchen. It's done. I have it. She handed it over like a little lost puppy. She really is a fool. Barbara's voice replied. My God, I thought she'd finally get suspicious. It's almost sad. Barbara let out a small, strangled sound. She looked at Rebecca, her face twisted in a snarl of pure hatred. You let her. It wasn't just the envelope, Barbara, Grace said. It was the car, the house, the deliveries to your mother. Mr. Evans found it all. The man I hired with the pearls you made me sell. Helen let out a wail. You told. You lied to me, Grace said, her eyes locked on Barbara. You all did. You framed me. You made me a fool. You stole my home, my money, and my life. You used my love for you as a weapon to fund your escape. Grace, please, Barbara whispered, her tone changing. She was a victim again. Tears streamed down her face. They made me. Rebecca Harrison. It was their plan. I was scared. I just wanted to come home to you. Grace just looked at her. She felt nothing. No pity. No anger. Just empty. The funny thing is, Grace said softly, you were right. It is almost sad. You had everything. A life. A home. Someone who loved you. And you burned it all down for this. For money. For her. Grace looked at Rebecca, who was now just a common criminal, her power gone. Was it worth it? Grace asked. Rebecca just stared at the floor, silent. Take them out, the agent ordered. The three women were pulled to their feet. You can't do this. Barbara screamed as the agents pushed her toward the door. I love you, Grace. Don't let them do this. I love you. She was still screaming, I love you, as she was forced into the back of a federal car. Grace stood in the driveway watching them go. A separate team radioed in. Harrison is in custody. It was over. Mr. Evans walked up and stood beside her. Well, he said. That's that. Grace looked at the house. The house built on her money. She looked at the blue car. The car bought with her sacrifice. It's all evidence, she said, more to herself than to him. And you, Grace? He asked. What now? Grace turned away from the house and looked up at the bright, cold sky. She had no money. She had no home. She had nothing but the clothes on her back. Now, she said, taking her first breath of truly free air. I begin. She had lost her past. But she had just finally gotten her future back. The months that followed were a different kind of hard. The trial was a media sensation. The prison plot, the newspapers called it. Wife betrayed, wife gets justice. Grace had to testify. She had to sit in a courtroom just as she had for Barbara's first trial and tell her story. But this time she was not the weeping wife in the gallery. She was the star witness. She told the court everything. About the bus rides. About selling her home. About the pearls. About the compassionate release money. And then the prosecution played the recording for the jury. The courtroom was silent, listening to Barbara and Rebecca laugh about the fool. Barbara, Rebecca, Helen, and Harrison all sat at the defendant's table. They had turned on each other, of course. Harrison's lawyers tried to claim he was being blackmailed by Rebecca. Rebecca's lawyer claimed she was a victim of Barbara's manipulation. And Barbara's lawyer. He tried to claim she was suffering from a mental condition, controlled by everyone. No one bought it. The evidence was too complete. The marked bills from Grace's retirement fund had been found in Helen's freezer. The recorder had been in Rebecca's car. The trail was perfect. They were all found guilty. Harrison, for his part in the original embezzlement and conspiracy, received a long sentence. Helen, for her part in the laundering, received several years. Rebecca, for her corruption as a public official, bribery and conspiracy to aid in escape, was given a very long sentence. She would be a prisoner in a system she once ruled. And Barbara, the mastermind, received the longest sentence of all. Her original light sentence was thrown out. She was convicted on all new charges. She would be an old woman before she ever tasted free air again. Grace was in the courtroom for the sentencing. She watched as Barbara was led away in handcuffs. Their eyes met one last time. Grace saw no remorse in them. No apology. Just a cold, bottomless hatred. Barbara hated her. Not for the betrayal but for getting caught. Grace just looked at her, then turned and walked out of the courtroom. She never went back to the prison. She never spoke to Barbara again. Life was not easy. The government's asset forfeiture unit seized the blue car, the house, and all the money they could find. Mr. Evans, whose investigative work was praised by the FBI, filed a claim on her behalf. As a victim of the fraud, Grace was entitled to restitution. It took almost a year, but one day she received a check from the government. It wasn't the millions they had stolen. Most of that was gone, hidden in offshore accounts they couldn't find. But it was the money they could prove she had lost. The value of her house. Her retirement money. The cost of her car. It was enough. The first thing she did was pay Mr. Evans not just for his services, but with a large bonus. He tried to refuse, but she insisted. "You're the only person who believed me, Mr. Evans. You saved my life." The second thing she did was buy a small, quiet condominium on the other side of town. It was small, but it was hers. She filled it with new furniture, simple pieces that she liked. He kept her job at the library. She liked the quiet. She liked the order of the books. She liked being surrounded by stories. One evening, about a year after the trial, she was at home making tea. She caught her reflection in the glass of the kitchen window. She paused, looking at herself. The woman looking back at her was different. She was older, of course. There were new lines around her eyes and her hair had more gray. But she was not the fool. She was not the little lost puppy. She was not the weak, weeping wife. The woman in the mirror was strong. She had been to the lowest point a person could go. She had been betrayed, lied to, and laughed at by the people she trusted most. She had lost everything. And she had fought back. She had used her pain and turned it into a weapon. She had taken down a powerful, corrupt system all by herself. Grace smiled at the woman in the mirror. It was a real smile, one that reached her eyes. She was alone, but she was not lonely. She was broke, but she was not poor. She had faced the very worst of people and she had survived. She was free. She picked up her cup of tea and went to sit on her new balcony, watching the sunset. The past was a scar, but it no longer hurt. It was just a reminder of what she had overcome. And for the first time in as long as she could remember, Grace felt something new. She felt peace.